Welcome to the Doggie Dojo. I'm your host, Susan Light, a Los Angeles-based dog trainer on a quest to become worthy of the title Sensei of the Doggie Dojo. Today we're talking about advocating for your dog, why you might need to, and how to do it. Joining me is someone who makes it easier for everyone to be an advocate through the company she co-founded, Woof Cultr. She first started out in the dog industry as a certified professional dog walker, turned certified trainer while living in San Francisco, and realized there was a big gap in the positive reinforcement community. Quality, cool, and nerdy t-shirts to wear while out training with her clients and personal dogs. She is the main face behind Woof Cultr and handles everything from social media to customer service emails and making sure orders get moving. Her whole mission for Woof Cultr is to help spread the word of more humane training methods through her gear by creating shirts for trainers, dog nerds, and behaviorists, and anyone who loves working with their animals in a positive and humane way. She's very passionate about only using humane training methods and always making sure the animals in her care are advocated for in all situations. I'm so pleased to welcome Mandy Boutelle. Mandy, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm happy to chat with you about all this fun stuff.
I'm super excited. So I know this is a topic that is near and dear to your heart.
Very much so.
Most positive reinforcement dog trainers probably. But so what do we mean when we mean advocating for our dogs? It's a little bit hard to put in a nutshell, but what are we talking about?
For me, I feel like it just means speaking up for them because, you know, your animals, your dogs, they aren't able to voice when they don't feel comfortable in a situation, whether it be pain or just uncomfortable, fear, any of that stuff. And I think it just means, you know, being the voice for the voiceless. That's been my main thing of kind of how I've approached with Woof Cultr, is just trying to speak up for the ones that can't speak and making sure that their needs are met and they're not being made to feel uncomfortable at all.
I love that. So I feel like sometimes people, to know, they need to study a little bit of canine body language, which I didn't really have down in our notes to talk about today, but I guess it's part and parcel. Like sometimes it's on the owner to really understand that they're putting their dogs in this uncomfortable position as well.
Mm-hmm, definitely. There are plenty of really good resources out there, as I'm sure you know and have spoken about as well. My main one that comes to head is Lili Chin's Doggie Drawings, her book that she came out, such a good reference. And I know she also has that chart that you see pretty much anywhere from any trainer of Boogie. And it's just all his different body reactions to certain situations. I feel like that is a great place to start if you're trying to understand dog body language for sure.
Yeah, I think I should do an episode all about that at some point. So we won't linger too long. But I think part of it stems from the fact that our gut instinct as humans who like dogs, when we see a dog in public, is kind of opposite
of what it should be.
Of what's positive. I remember one of the first like infographics that I posted on my Instagram a long time ago was a breakdown of, on one side it was what an excited dog lover does when they see a dog and what an informed dog lover does when they see a dog.
I love that.
And the response was really like, oh my God, I'm ruining dogs. Like everybody felt so upset. And it's like, we just don't understand. Like our instinct of showing this dog that we love them is kind of opposite. It's about what we need. And we really need to flip the paradigm into what they need.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think another thing is just the whole dog culture has shifted so much, even in the last, 10 years, but even the last 5 years, things have really shifted a lot. And I think when you see a dog and you're like, oh my God, they're so cute, especially if it's a puppy or a big fluffy one, and you're just like, oh my God, I need to say hi to them. I think it really just helps when you kind of approach it and just look at every dog as they could be fearful. And maybe they just don't want to say hi. And I think the most appropriate thing to do is just, don't make eye contact with the dog and just look at the owner and be like, oh, your dog's so cute. Or just keep walking and say it in your head. I know it's so hard to fight that urge sometimes, but you got to think of what the dog could be feeling in a situation like that. I know for sure I have a pandemic puppy and she is not okay with people approaching her. And I have to have a whole skit of like what I have to say to people if they do want to say hi to her.
Ooh, I'm super excited to break that down. But that's part of what I just want people to understand is like, we need to change the new normal to be ignoring the dogs. There's somebody with an account, and I'll have to look it up and link it, because they have named their account Ignore My Dog. They have made their whole brand Ignore My Dog. And I know they do shirts as well. They're trying to just get that out of like,
just ignore my dog.
Yeah, they're not here. It's the best, because as trainers, we're always telling people like, don't let your dog greet people on leash, especially the puppies. Like, let's not let them greet people or dogs on leash. And they're like, but people are so mean if I say they can't pet my dog.
That's a them problem, not a you problem.
Absolutely. But it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Of course.
So let's say that the first step to advocating for your dog is being willing to have strangers be upset with you.
Yeah, I think one of the things I really had to, when we got Fern, our pandemic puppy, is we had to go in thinking like, she is probably going to be afraid of people. She is not desensitized to seeing people all the time. She has been in our house most of the time. And so, of course, when she was a baby, we got her at about 13 weeks. Right as soon as she got her shots, we started taking her out, and people would just be like, oh my God, is that a puppy? Can we say hi? She's so cute. And I would just be like, hey, she's a pandemic puppy. She's fearful of people and is pretty shy. I do have some really awesome treats if you wouldn't mind giving her some. And could you toss them behind her or over her head? And people will either give me a weird look and be like, no. And I'd be like, okay, well, sorry, you can't say hi. Or, they'd be like, yeah, sure. And I'm very gracious and grateful for them. And I just say, oh, thank you so much. Like, this is really helpful for her so that she's not afraid of people. We're working on people not being scary for her. And I will say 9 times out of 10, people will gladly do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. But that takes a lot of effort on your part.
Absolutely.
To set those boundaries.
Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. And I used to say this to clients all the time. If you just say, nope, can't say hi. There is nothing wrong with saying no and being short and moving on. It's your dog and you're advocating for what they can handle.
Yeah. And I would say this is the one issue that the pandemic actually helped. I mean, in one way it made it worse. We're talking about the pandemic puppies not being able to have opportunities for socialization, right, obviously. But as far as like being the new normal to, if you see someone walking, to just cross the street and not get within 6 feet of them, that's actually like the best case scenario. If you want to think about like how to act with the dog, just keep this habit. Of being like, when you're 6 feet away, smile and cross the street. And that was the polite thing to do during the pandemic. That is definitely the polite, positive, proactive thing to do when you see a dog, to be honest.
Oh yeah. I mean, even before the pandemic, I would see people walking their dogs. I'd go off in the gutter and get out of the way. Cause you never know how a dog's going to feel passing a person. And I'd rather not subject them to any stress.
Absolutely. So I hope people are hearing that, it's not mean. Yes, people may not take it well. I don't know if you have horror stories of people losing it because you just wouldn't let them pet your cute dog, but I know they're out there.
They are out there. They definitely are.
But these are not people worth losing any, time worrying about.
And chances are they're not someone you really want saying hi to your dog anyway, because that's usually someone that doesn't know how to read body language and smothers the poor dog with affection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about the scripts and strategies, because sometimes I know some owners will literally have their clients rehearse somebody coming up and wanting, to pet the dog. And I think it's a great idea, and it makes people feel a little more comfortable than trying to figure it out on the fly the first time it happens in real life.
Oh, absolutely. Since my husband and I are both former trainers, I'm like, we need to have a spiel to say for Fern because I don't want to deal with people approaching her. And so we totally practice that with ourselves of like, okay, what are we going to say if someone comes up to us? I will say if you do have a shy or fearful dog, but they do warm up to people relatively fast, like Fern does, have really awesome treats with you for situations like this. So I like to carry like a potpourri of mixed treats. And I will just say like, oh, she's really shy, but if you wouldn't mind tossing treats past her, you can do that. Otherwise, you know, we can't really say hi. There's that side. Or, you know, if your dog is very reactive to people just aren't their jam, that's okay. And you can just say, oh, sorry, we don't say hi to people. They're fearful. Or you can just say, no, we're not saying hi, and avoid them.
Yeah. And the thing about a reactive dog, which anyone that's working with a reactive dog knows, is that if you keep enough distance, like your goal is to not see the reaction.
Right.
Keep enough distance that you're keeping the dog comfortable. So it can be difficult for people to understand what you're saying from 15 feet away.
Right.
Exactly. So you have to sometimes be the proactive and, you know, hopefully not. I have one colleague who literally, she crossed the street and the person like followed and she had to turn around and be like, stop following us.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She was like, I need to buy pepper spray.
That's like worst case scenario situation, I will say. But I feel like people pick up on human body language quicker than they do with dogs just because they don't understand it yet. So, I mean, your body language can display, we don't want to say hi, you know, turning around, crossing the street, going behind a car. There are other ways you can display that you don't want to say hi and you don't want to interact without having to vocalize it. Or you can wear your Woof Cultr shirt that says, my dog doesn't want to say hi.
I love it. Or the ignore my dog. Yes. So that's a perfect segue to talk about. You have totally transitioned your whole business into basically helping people advocate for all kinds of positive reinforcement training. But a lot of your shirts would totally work for pet parents who they say, you know, yes, we're training, give us some space. No, you can't say hi, those kinds of things. And I think that's awesome. And people should definitely check out your website, which I will link, because it can be a great way to open the conversation or get your message across.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely, it's funny, I didn't think it would turn into what it is now. Mainly we were just geared towards trainers, but now I think having more experience with my clients over the years, I realized I'm like, they need something that says what they're doing and people need to back off. And I just, you know, there needs to be a way to do that. And so actually one of my former puppy clients, they had a really bad situation at a dog park and he became fear reactive. And so I told her and we set up a whole training plan and I was like, you know, it would really help if you got one of these shirts that I sell and it would help to avoid situations. And she bought shirts that said, you know, my dog doesn't want to say hi, give us space, all like every single shirt like that. And she was like, it's helped so much. Like people actually will read. I'm like, yes, because you are a walking billboard advocating for what your dog needs. And
absolutely.
I feel like that's what the shirts are. They make you a walking billboard, like especially the reactive dog social distancing before it was cool. Reactive dog owners will totally get that. They're the OG social distancers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they do make leashes that say these things as well.
Yes,
and harnesses. Yeah. And I mean, you can shout it from the rooftop with gear, basically.
Be a sandwich board of you don't want to say hi.
And sometimes that's what it takes. Because if your dog is adorable and it's not actively reacting, they just don't get it.
No. And then they'll come up and then they'll be like, oh, why did that happen?
Yeah, I was literally, because I was working outdoors with a lot of clients during the pandemic. I was at a park with this dog that was a barker, a little terrier. And this like 2-year-old toddled up and they're like, can they say hi? And we're like, no, you know, he's going to scare him because he's going to bark. And they're like, oh, and then the dog barked at him and scared him and the baby's crying and they're looking at us like we're jerks. And we're like, we just told you.
Literally just told you.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes you're just going to shake your head and be like, I can't have done anything else.
As long as you're speaking up for the dog and saying what needs to be said, you can't control humans, unfortunately.
We've got to take a quick break, but there are links in the show notes to Woofcultr's Instagram, Facebook, and website. The link I've listed offers a special 15% one-time discount for my listeners if you want to get some Woofcultr gear. I've got a bunch of it. I can't recommend it enough. You can also use the discount code Doggie Dojo, DOGGY-DOJO at checkout. We'll be right back. So we've been talking a little bit about what you're doing, like out on walks. These are mostly strangers or neighbors. But what about like with friends and family? Because it's not just strangers that sometimes want to push the boundaries.
Yeah, friends and family can be a little harder too, just because, they think, oh, we're family, we're related, like we don't need to follow the protocol, when they absolutely do. I think one thing is just really being firm with, look, this is what is needed for our dog. This is the situation we're in, and this is how you can help. And if you don't want to help, then, we can't hang out in certain situations, where, our dog is going to be subjected to stress. So for Fern, again, we were dealing with family coming over, and it was still really spooky for her to have people coming in the house. It was terrifying. So we just said, hey, walk in, ignore her, please. We're going to give you guys treats. We have a jar of treats by the front door. Toss treats over her head, and then can you walk away behind the baby gate and ignore her for a little bit? And luckily, our family was willing to do that. But, I've also had friends come over, and they've just walked up to my dog, and I'm like, no, that's not going to work. And I've just had to go put Fern away because they're not going to listen. So, And then I've said, if you're going to come to my house, please follow this protocol so that my dog does not feel stressed in her own environment.
And you know what? Hire a trainer and blame the trainer. I always
absolutely
tell them, my trainer says I'm not allowed to do that. You can't do that. You have to do this. This is what they said. And it's true. But you can lie and say that. But why not? Why not get some help? And they can help you script it. They can help you practice it. And then you can blame them.
Yes. And that's something I always told my clients. I'm like, blame me. Put the blame on me. They can, reach out to me if they're uncomfortable with it. But we're trying to make that your dog feel good. We don't need to worry about other people.
Yeah. So let's talk about because this is an unregulated industry. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of professionals out there who are going to try to do things to your dog that you aren't going to like either. And so that is a really difficult situation for people to be in because it's a position of trust, right? They're professional. Right. You're assuming that they're doing well. I mean, I just had this whole conversation with my puppy class on Saturday about grooming and cooperative care. And one of my clients who has a standard poodle, she's like, but don't they have to go through certification things to be groomers? Because we were talking about like how traumatic a bad grooming can be, mm-hmm. And how they kind of manhandle them. And she was shocked to know that absolutely not. There are programs available to certify groomers, but you don't have to go through one. And the person that you take your dog to at PetSmart may or may not, you know what I mean?
Right,
and
exactly.
I said, also with grooming, unfortunately, because I did interview a groomer, my very first episode, she said when she went through her training, they taught those techniques of force.
Right. They're not fully R+ yet. I think there's like a few programs that do focus on that, but not many do. It's more of like, just get it done.
Absolutely. I was like, you have to think from their perspective. They've got 10 dogs to do. They're throwing a muzzle on them that they have one of those slip muzzles usually, mm-hmm. hasn't been trained, hasn't been desensitized. They're holding them down. They're up in every bit of their body. I was like, just imagine it. And you can see what's going on. And some of them are just really, really shocked to think that this is what's going on when they're dropping their dog at the groomer. So what do you do? And it's not just groomers. And I'm not attacking groomers because they're professionals. Their job is hard. They're trying to get it done. But, I'm all for the holistic and cooperative care grooming if you can do that for your dog. But vets, a trainer. You might go hire a trainer and they're starting to show you things you're not comfortable with.
I wish there was more regulation and programs. And I mean, even most vets, unless they are certified fear-free vet clinic or they practice predominantly R+ methods, they're not going to really know, because I know a lot of vet schools and, you know, vet tech stuff, they don't even really cover how, they just want the dog in and out. They just handle it, get it done. Same with grooming. I feel like it's hard when it comes to trainers, because I feel like if as soon as you hear someone say something as far as like inserting punishment or pain, if that doesn't sound right to you and it's, you know, your dog isn't going to learn in an environment like that, I would just say, okay, we will be looking into other trainers, or, you know, just say, I don't think this is going to work. And I think that's okay. You don't really need to give a response to that. If you're thinking of going to a groomer, I would, you know, walk in without your animal and just see if you can, like, see how the dogs look in the environment. If you can see the dogs in the back and see how the situations get handled for that aspect. I think I'm a little more versed with vets just because I have had to be so adamant with our vets because of Fern and her being a pandemic puppy. I actually had a horrible experience when she was a baby, before she, like, I think she had just hit 16 weeks and she had gotten her last shot. It was just like a checkup appointment after adopting her. And of course it was peak pandemic because it was January of this year. So I couldn't go in with her and I just had all the anxiety. I'm like, my puppy's going in. I can't handle her. What if they traumatize her? Like, I've been working on cooperative care nail work with her so that she's okay with handling, like, oh, and I just had a panic attack in the car. And then they brought her out. And the first thing they say to me is, oh, she did great. We trimmed her nails. And I was just like, why did you trim her nails? And they were like, oh, it's part of the protocol to get her used to it. And I was like, no, you did not ask my permission. And now I will be finding another vet. And they were just shocked that I was just like, well, you didn't ask my permission to do this to my animal. And you just subjected her to this stressful situation. Now I'm never coming to your office. And so that's one thing, like, I have had to make sure with other vets is, okay, you're not trimming her nails, right? You're not doing this. Like, and luckily our new vet, they're like, oh no, like, if they're not comfortable with something, we will not do it. And I'm like, thank God, like, we need more vet clinics like you people. And so now, like, going into the vet is a good situation. And I think this is the first time I've ever walked into a vet's office and my dog isn't afraid to go in. She walks in confidently. And that's because I've worked very hard with the vet techs. Like, they've gone to take her thermometer check and everything. And I'm just like, hey, she's not really great with that. And they're like, okay, like, I'm going to let her smell it. If she's just not okay with being touched and stuff, we won't do it. And anytime, you know, I'm like, oh, she's not comfortable, they're like, okay. And so, like, the vet will sit on the floor and wait and work with me. But again, I think that is you just walking in confidently and saying, hey, this is the situation. How can we work together to make this work? And if your vet is just like, no, we need to get him in and out, that's not the vet for you. And it's okay to find the professional that works best for you and your dog. You do not have to go just because it is closer to your house. I think it's worth finding somewhere that you know your dog is going to feel safe and confident, and you have the support when you need it most.
Absolutely. And it's important for people to hear that there are tons of vets out there.
Tons.
There are tons of groomers out there. You know, it's kind of hard to find holistic groomers and fear-free groomers. And I mean, there's a dearth of them. I hope that some people will go into that because there's a huge need for it. But you can also do cooperative care and do your grooming at home, a lot of it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. You don't have to do anything just because they're the professional and they say. And the trainer, or anyone really, you should ask why.
Yes.
You know, why? If something's going on and you're like, I don't understand that, ask why. And if the why makes sense to you, okay, but go with your gut and don't be afraid to ask why. And
right.
Don't be afraid to find another person that jives better with you.
Exactly. It's just remember that you need to be thinking, will my animal feel comfortable in this situation. If your gut is telling you no, then keep looking.
Yeah, I love that. So that's super important. And I think people get really intimidated by professionals,
Absolutely.
And...
They're like, they have the certifications sometimes, and they must know what they're doing, but really 9 times out of 10 they don't. And I think advocating for them really helps.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have advice for people giving unsolicited advice?
Ooh, are we talking unsolicited, like training advice or health advice or just general?
I mean, all of the above, because people will walk, if you're saying, oh no, we're doing this, like very often people will be like, well, with my dog, blah, 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 or my trainer says, or blah, 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 blah. Sometimes they think that's just opening up to have a conversation. It's like, that's not what I'm here for.
I feel like I'm just very passive with that kind of stuff and a little like, okay, yeah, sure. But I feel like when people try to give me training advice, a lot of times they don't know I have a training background. So then they try to tell me how to do training or suggestions. And I'm just like, okay, that's nice. And I just let it go over my head because I'm like, I am not going to try and tell you that is so not right for your dog. I've had situations where I, have my puppy and people are like, oh, just bring her to the bar. It'll be fine. She needs to get used to being around people. And I'm like, no, that's flooding and my dog will be traumatized. And so I just say, oh, no, it's fine. I'm going to leave her at home. We'll meet you guys there. But I think just learning to brush things off and not really pay much attention. And if people try to dive into it and just be like, oh, well, that's great. That worked for your dog. But I don't think there's a way to really say like, no, that doesn't work. Because then you're setting yourself up to get into a huge rabbit hole of a conversation that you probably don't want to get into.
Yeah, this is great advice, I think, just to not engage and it's, let's say online as well.
Oh, God.
Well, a lot of unsolicited or misinformation.
There's so many professionals online, and I put air quotes on the professionals.
So, yeah, honestly, it's probably a waste of your energy to try to convince someone otherwise. So,
yeah, if someone
I love it.
Comes on and they're just like, well, I did this with my dog, and it's like, well, that's great. You did that with your dog, and that worked with your dog.
Yeah. Moving on.
Right.
Absolutely. I have one more scenario before we go because I'm sure there's more, but this is the nightmare scenario for everyone. And that's an unleashed dog or dogs approaching.
Yes. Whew. Okay. So we got to think of the context, of course, of how it could be, but I have had off-leash dogs run up to my little puppy, and thank God she is dog social. But I have had dogs in the past that are not dog social, and they have been muzzled, and I'm just like, no, like my dog doesn't like dogs. You need to get yours. But I think the biggest thing is just, I mean, again, it depends on the context, but I feel like if you see the dog coming at you and that person is not bothering to run after their dog and you have your dog, the safest way to get out of Dodge is just grab a handful of your treats, throw them far away, and get your dog out of Dodge and just go. So that dog can focus on those treats and you can get going. Yeah. Because if the dog's already like halfway to you and the owner just is like, what? They're friendly.
That's what they always say.
I'm like, I don't care.
It's not about your dog.
Right. And I have to go, mine isn't. And you can lie and say, like, they don't know. I always just go, well, mine isn't. And they'll go,
mine's contagious.
Right. They'll be like, oh, Fido, come. And you're just like, okay, well, they're not going to get their dog. Here's treats. And just get out of Dodge. But, it depends on how spicy I'm feeling that day. Because sometimes I always keep my dog, especially Fern, not my senior boy, because he's hyper attached to me. But Bernie, I always keep her on a 30-foot long line. It's just a safety protocol. You know, we're in Oregon. There will be deer, rabbits, whenever we pop up sometimes. So I just always keep her on a long line just as a safety protocol so that I can reel her in. And where we take our dogs, they are deemed on-leash areas. But of course, I let her, you know, do her thing if there is no one around us. But I keep the long line on. And so I'll tell people like, hey, this is still on leash park. And they'll, you know, they'll be like, oh, well, I'm like, your dog clearly isn't good on leash. And again, it depends on my spicy level, but sometimes I'll be like, well, if your dog isn't on voice control, you should really keep them on leash.
Yeah, the laws don't seem to do anything.
No.
I love to take pictures of dogs running off leash within
leashed areas.
In view of the sign
right.
that says dogs must be on leash in this park at all times. And people just seem to think it's like the best part of having a dog is letting them run off leash. It's like their goals in life to let their dog run off leash.
And they're just like, look at them. They're just having a good time.
Look at them go.
And you're like, oh, look, it's running to that dog. And it's like, yeah, maybe you should call it.
Yeah.
Love that.
But yeah, so the laws don't usually do it. The reason I added this to the list was we take reactive dogs on pack hikes and work with them on neutrality and things like that. And some of them are in muzzles and some of them aren't, but most of them are reactive. And we take them to a trail that the whole park is on leash. You're never supposed to have your dogs off leash. And they just ran into yesterday another trainer walking a pack of dogs all off leash.
Oh, God.
Right. And they're like, they saw one dog first, and they're like, oh, there's an off-leash dog. And then it's like, oh, shit, there's 2 or 3. Oh, my God, it's 15 off-leash dogs running towards our pack of reactive dogs. And then when the trainer moseys up, you know, and it's like, in a place where it's completely actually against the law for them to be off-leash. So, I mean, nightmare scenario. We're gonna ask people to leave their dogs on leash where it's legally they're supposed to.
Yes, please.
But we know that they won't.
Please just even have a long line on your dog so you can reel them in when they notice another dog, so that they don't have to sprint to another dog. One thing I will say, just piggybacking off of all of that, again, your body language is a clear sign when people, you know, they can get a good view of you and your dog, and you know. I will grab my long line, get it real. So she's maybe 6 feet in front of me, get to the side of the trail, have it so that she is on the side where the dog isn't. And I will just try to walk past and make it very clear. Like, I don't want to say hi. My dog doesn't want to say hi.
Yeah. And from a training perspective, training an emergency U-turn, where your dog will change direction. And I love the strategy, throw a handful of treats. That's not for your dog. That is for the off-leash dog, hoping they'll go for that instead of your dog. And then you guys get the hell out of Dodge.
Right.
Thank you, Mandy, for joining me today. My biggest takeaways from this conversation are, 1, our dogs cannot speak up. And so it's our job to speak up for them, and our job to make sure that they always feel safe and secure and they're not being put in situations that are too difficult for them. And 2, there are plenty of professionals out there. So if you're trying to work with a professional that does not treat your dog or you the way that you think that you all should be treated, find somebody else. And that is a huge way to advocate for your dog. Thanks for coming to the dojo to learn with me this week. This is your aspiring sensei, Susan Light, signing off. If you'd like to find me, I'm at doggiedojopodcast.com, or I'm at Susan Light LA on Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook. The music was written by Mac Light. You can find him at maclightsongwriter.com. If you liked the show, you can support it by subscribing, sharing it with your friends, rating it, and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts. See you in 2 weeks with another new episode of the Doggie Dojo.